Saturday afternoon at Oakwood Plaza Mall, the largest shopping center in Lexington, Kentucky, unfolded in its usual rhythm. Familiar sounds filled the air, the cheerful laughter of children tugging their parents toward the ice cream stand, the chatter of shoppers hunting for deals in various stores, and the soft hum of pop music playing through the speakers. The warm aroma of freshly baked pretzels and sweet cinnamon rolls wafted from a nearby bakery stand, creating an inviting atmosphere. In the distance, a young mother knelt to adjust her son's shoe, while a group of teenagers gathered by the central fountain, occasionally bursting into laughter as they watched videos on their phones. Everything seemed to mark just another ordinary afternoon at Oakwood Plaza. Then the normalcy was abruptly shattered. The automatic doors at the main entrance slid open and a man stepped inside. He was tall, confident, and immediately commanded attention. Dressed in a sleek black blazer, dark blue jeans, and polished leather shoes that caught the overhead lights, his face was partially obscured by stylish sunglasses. But it wasn't his sophisticated appearance that drew the crowd's attention. It was the hat. A bright red baseball cap stood out unmistakably amidst the bustling crowd, its bold white letters spelling out MAGA. Those near the entrance glanced up, some furrowing their brows, while others whispered to one another. Curiosity spread like wildfire. "Is that, a young man near the fountain began, trailing off. His friend quickly pulled out a phone to snap a picture. "No way," he replied, already recording. "But look at the way he's walking. It's just like Elon Musk," the first said, his voice tinged with awe. Heads turned as the crowd began to gather, everyone angling for a better view. The man appeared unfazed, strolling leisurely past storefronts and occasionally pausing to examine advertisement posters. When he reached a kiosk selling miniature drones, he leaned down, picked up a display drone, and inspected it with an air of casual interest, as if he had all the time in the world. Meanwhile, on the second floor, in the management office, Tom Andrews was wrapping up a brief meeting with his team. His desk, meticulously organized, bore a schedule packed with tasks, each time slot marked with precision. Tom, the middle-aged man with graying hair, wore a tailored suit that mirrored his no-nonsense personality and strict demeanor. "We need to keep everything under control. I don't want anything tarnishing the mall's reputation," he said firmly, his gaze locking with each team member. "This is a family space, not a stage for political statements." A sharp knock interrupted the meeting. Linda Carter, the mall's head of security, entered hurriedly. Her normally neat bun was slightly undone, a clear sign she'd rushed to deliver news. "Tom," Linda said, her voice slightly breathless, "you need to come downstairs. We've got a situation." Tom frowned. "What kind of situation?" Linda hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "There's a man downstairs who looks a lot like Elon Musk, and he's wearing a MAGA hat." Tom stared at her, disbelief evident on his face. Elon Musk, in Lexington, wearing a MAGA hat. Linda nodded. "If it's not him, it's someone who looks remarkably similar. But that's not the point. The hat. People are gathering and filming him." Tom let out a deep sigh, pulling the radio from his belt and adjusting the frequency. He'd dealt with all kinds of issues here, from unruly customers to lost children, but this was different, far more complicated. "I'll handle it. Linda, come with me." As they descended to the main floor, Tom felt a knot of unease forming in his chest. "This is the last thing I need to deal with this week," he thought, trying to maintain his composure. When they reached the bookstore area, Tom saw the growing crowd, phones raised high like a sea of tiny arms pleading for attention. He took a deep breath, his polished leather shoes echoing against the glossy tile floor with each step. Ahead, the man in the red cap stood casually flipping through the pages of a book, seemingly unaware, or deliberately ignoring, the commotion around him. Tom approached, tension coiling in his stomach like a spring about to snap. This isn't going to be an easy day, he thought grimly, keeping his stride steady. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as he moved closer, scattered questions mingling with bursts of excitement. A curious mix of tension and fascination filled the air. "He's reading a book on artificial intelligence. Totally fits, doesn't it?" "No way," someone whispered, their voice trailing off in awe. That's Elon Musk. Why would he even be here? But that hat, what's he trying to say with that?" Tom took a deep breath. Over the years, he'd handled countless situations in this mall. Lost children, disgruntled customers, even the occasional shoplifter. But this was unlike anything he'd dealt with before. It wasn't just about a man in a controversial hat. It was about the tension simmering in the air, the eyes of the crowd locked on him, and the stakes for the mall's reputation. His eyes scanned the gathering until they settled on the man. He was leaning casually against a bookshelf, seemingly unbothered by the commotion swirling around him. The bright red hat on his head, emblazoned with the bold white letters MAGA, was undeniably the focal point. It stood out like a flashing beacon, drawing curiosity, controversy, and debate. Tom stopped a few steps away, adjusted his tie, and drew in another steadying breath. Stay in control, stay calm, he reminded himself. This wasn't just a conversation, it was a test of leadership, a moment that could define not only his ability to manage, but also the way the mall was perceived by its patrons. "Sir," Tom began, his voice calm yet firm, loud enough to cut through the murmuring crowd. Instantly, a hush fell over the group, every gaze shifting to him. "I'm the manager of this mall. We have a clear policy against political expressions in public spaces. I'm going to have to ask you to remove the hat or leave." The man lifted his head, placing the book he was holding back on the shelf. He didn't rush to respond. Instead, he adjusted his sunglasses, taking a measured pause, as though deliberately weighing his next move. Then, with slow deliberation, he removed the sunglasses, revealing sharp blue eyes that locked onto Tom's with a calm yet unsettling intensity. "Neutral policy," the man said, his voice low but commanding enough to carry through the quiet. "Funny, I thought neutral meant not taking sides." Tom felt a ripple of tension tighten in his chest. He met the man's gaze, striving to keep his tone even. "That's correct, sir. Our policy is designed to ensure that all customers feel comfortable and aren't subjected to political messages. Your hat, it might make some people uncomfortable." The man's lips curled into a faint smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. He removed the hat, holding it in his hands as he studied it for a moment. "It's just a hat," he said, his voice steady. "So what makes it such a threat here?" Before Tom could answer, a voice from the crowd interjected. "He's right. It's just a hat. Why are we making such a big deal out of this?" Immediately, another voice countered, this time an older man standing near the front. "It's not just about the hat. This is a family-friendly mall. Rules are rules." The crowd began to fracture, some clapping in agreement with the man in the hat, while others murmured that the man in the hat had every right to enforce its policies. The hum of voices rose into a wave of debate, the line between order and chaos blurring with each passing second. Tom felt the weight of the moment bearing down on him. Lifting his radio, he spoke briskly. "Linda, I need backup at the bookstore." Within minutes, 2 security officers arrived. Mike Johnson, tall and imposing, with a no-nonsense demeanor, took the lead. Beside him was Emily Baker, a new hire, who looked visibly nervous as her eyes darted between the crowd and the man. Mike gave Tom a subtle nod, signaling that they were ready to step in if needed. "Sir," Tom said again, his tone firmer this time, "this is your final warning. If you don't remove the hat or leave, we'll have to escort you out." The man raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable yet unwavering. "Really?" he replied, his voice calm but carrying an edge of challenge. "So you're ready to kick me out just for wearing a hat, even though I haven't done anything wrong?" His words hung in the air, drawing the crowd's attention. Then he stepped closer to Tom, his movements measured, deliberate, yet not overtly confrontational. "Or," the man continued, his sharp gaze boring into Tom's, "is this not about the hat at all? Is it about the person wearing it?" Tom felt the weight of the question hit him like a punch to the chest. He didn't answer immediately, his gaze darting through the crowd as he sought clarity amidst the rising tension. Mike stepped forward, his hand hovering near the man's shoulder, prepared to guide him away. But the man raised a hand, stopping him in his tracks. "If you're going to kick me out, go ahead," the man said, his voice louder now, resonating through the gathering. "Let everyone here see it. Let them record it and post it online. Let them ask themselves, what does neutrality really mean?" A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. A young man shouted, "Yeah, let him wear the hat." A woman countered, "This is private property. They have the right to enforce their rules." Tom took another deep breath, struggling to keep the pressure in his chest under control. The situation had spiraled far beyond a simple enforcement of policy. This wasn't just about a hat anymore. "What will you do next?" the man asked, his voice razor-sharp, cutting through the chaotic noise. Tom hesitated, unsure how to respond. The crowd buzzed with anticipation, their collective attention focused on him. But before he could speak, the man in the hat stepped forward, his piercing blue eyes locked onto Tom's with an intensity that seemed to hold the room captive. "Before you make your decision," the man said, his voice calm but commanding, "let me say one thing." A heavy silence fell over the crowd. Even the murmurs ceased, and everyone, Tom included, leaned in unconsciously, drawn to the man at the center of the storm. The atmosphere in the bookstore section of the mall felt stretched to its limit. Phones remained raised, their lenses trained on the scene like watchful sentinels. The man, still wearing the red hat, stood tall, his confident gaze sweeping the crowd before settling back on Tom. "You think this is just about a hat?" the man began, his voice deep and resonant, carrying an almost magnetic pull that demanded attention. "But I tell you, it was never just about a hat." The murmurs among the crowd began to subside, a hush falling over the gathering, as though everyone sensed that the man was speaking about something far more significant. Tom, though accustomed to high-pressure situations, found it increasingly difficult to maintain his composure. There was something about this man, not just his striking appearance, but the way his words seemed to grip the room. "Sir," Tom interjected, his voice steady but tinged with unease. "I understand you have a point to make, but this is a shopping mall, not a place for speeches or debates. We have clear rules, and I need you to abide by them, otherwise we'll have to ask you to leave." The man turned his head slowly, his piercing blue eyes locking onto Tom's as though reading his thoughts. "You speak of rules," the man replied deliberately. "So let me ask you, are these rules truly meant to protect relationship, neutrality, or are they designed to shield you from what you don't want to confront?" The question landed like a blow. For a fleeting moment, Tom felt the principles he had long upheld being weighed, tested, and questioned. But he couldn't let that show. "The rules are meant to protect everyone," Tom countered, his tone firmer now. "We don't discriminate against anyone, but we also don't allow anything that could incite controversy or division in this space." The man's lips curled into a faint, enigmatic smile, as though he had heard something profoundly amusing. "A good answer," he said, "but I don't think that's the real reason behind what you're doing." He reached into the pocket of his blazer and pulled out a neatly folded piece of paper. Unfolding it slowly, he held it high, allowing the overhead lights to illuminate it. "This," he declared, his voice ringing clear through the crowd, "this is the real reason I'm here." The crowd erupted into a new wave of murmurs. Whispers spread like wildfire. "What is that?" a woman asked her husband in hushed tones. "Some kind of legal document?" a young man speculated, his voice brimming with curiosity. Tom furrowed his brows, staring at the paper with mounting confusion, unable to decipher its significance. The man continued, lowering his voice, just enough to heighten the suspense. "This is a letter," he said, his tone deliberate, each word carefully chosen. "A letter from someone who works here, someone named Sarah Williams." The moment the name was spoken, Tom froze. He recognized it immediately. Sarah Williams, one of the youngest employees in the food court. Quiet and reserved, she rarely engaged with her co-workers. Tom had never imagined she could be connected to any of this. Near the food counter, Sarah Williams, clad in her green uniform and an apron stained from a long day's work, stood motionless. Her eyes widened, and her lips formed a silent protest. "No, this can't be." Her hands trembled as she realized the man was holding the very letter she had written. The man's gaze swept over the crowd, pausing briefly on each face. Curious, skeptical, and even sympathetic expressions among them. "Sarah is a 201-year-old woman," he began, his voice warm but underscored with gravity. "She works here in the food court, juggling 2 jobs to support her family. Her mother is gravely ill, and the medical bills are pushing them to the brink. Yet despite everything, Sarah holds on to the hope that one day she'll be able to attend college." His words rendered the space utterly silent. A few people in the crowd sighed softly, their eyes softening with empathy. Tom felt a stirring deep within, a strange, unnameable emotion he couldn't suppress. "Sarah wrote to me," the man continued, raising the letter as irrefutable evidence. "Not to ask for money, not to seek special treatment. She simply sought advice. Advice on how to shoulder her family's burdens while not giving up on her dreams." Sarah's face flushed a deep red. She wanted to disappear, but her legs felt rooted to the tiled floor. The murmurs in the crowd began again, but this time they carried tones of compassion rather than criticism or argument. The man turned back to Tom, his gaze both stern and "My question to all of you," he said, his voice rising to fill the space, is this: what do we do when faced with people like Sarah? Do we judge them, or do we help them? Do we turn away, or do we extend a hand when they need it most? Tom's throat tightened. The man's words felt like they were aimed directly at him, demanding an answer he wasn't prepared to give. Before he could respond, the man addressed the crowd again, his tone softer now. "Sarah," he called out, his voice filled with gentle encouragement. "If you're here, don't be afraid. Come forward. I'm not here to embarrass you. I'm here to help." Sarah stood frozen, but the crowd began to shift. Those nearby started to realize she was the Sarah the man was speaking about. A few people turned to her with encouraging words. "Go on, girl," a co-worker beside her whispered reassuringly. "It's okay. Just go." Finally, Sarah took slow, hesitant steps toward the center of the crowd, where the man stood, still holding the red hat in his hand. Her eyes brimmed with uncertainty, her whole body trembling under the weight of emotion. "Thank you for coming," the man said warmly as Sarah reached him. He smiled, a gesture of kindness and understanding. Sarah stepped out of the crowd, each step heavy, as if crossing a desert under the intense gaze of hundreds of onlookers. Her hands clutched tightly onto her green apron, seeking a sense of security. A rule instead of the bigger picture. The man in the red hat turned to Tom, his expression calm and understanding. "Acknowledging that takes humility," he said. "It's not about the mistakes we make, but about how we grow from them." Tom nodded, his usual professional demeanor softening. "Thank you for showing me that." Sarah, clutching the envelope tightly, looked up at Tom. "Thank you, Mr. Tom," she said, her voice shaky but sincere, "for letting this happen." Tom smiled faintly, the weight of the moment pressing on him. "You deserve this, Sarah, and I'll make sure we all do better to support people like you moving forward." The crowd's applause grew louder, a wave of collective hope and inspiration sweeping through the space. Sarah, no longer trembling, stood straighter, her smile tentative but genuine as she looked out at the sea of faces. The man in the red hat turned his gaze back to the crowd, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. "This isn't about me. It's about what happens when we choose to lift each other up instead of tearing each other down. Every one of us has the power to make that choice." With that, the tension that had hung in the air dissipated, replaced by a palpable sense of unity. People began to disperse, their conversations softer and more reflective. Sarah wiped her tears and glanced back at the man, who gave her an encouraging nod before stepping back into the crowd, blending into the flow of people as if he had never been there. Tom stood still, his mind racing with thoughts of how he could lead with more compassion and understanding in the future. For Sarah, the letter she had written on a desperate whim had sparked a moment she would carry with her for the rest of her life. To say. The bustling noise of the mall faded into the background, leaving only the echo of Linda's words. Tom took a deep breath, his gaze falling to the floor as he absorbed their weight. "I suppose you're right," he finally admitted, his voice low but steady. "Maybe I've been too focused on the policies to see the people behind them." Linda placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Recognizing that is the first step. None of us are perfect, Tom, but what matters is what we do next." Tom nodded slowly, his thoughts still racing. His gaze shifted to Sarah, who was now surrounded by her co-workers. Their smiles and supportive words seemed to lift her, even as she clung to the envelope like a lifeline. He approached her cautiously, unsure of how to make amends. "Sarah," he began, his voice softer than usual, "I want you to know that I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry if I ever made you feel otherwise." Sarah turned to him, her expression one of surprise. "Thank you, Mr. Tom," she said, her voice small but sincere. "I know you were just doing your job." Tom managed a faint smile, though the guilt lingered. "Still, I'll make sure that going forward, we do things differently. This place should be a space where people feel supported, not just managed." Sarah nodded, her confidence growing with each passing moment. "I appreciate that," she said, her voice steadier now. The remaining crowd, though thinning, still cast curious glances at the scene. Some whispered among themselves, while others took one last photo or video before walking away. The air in the mall felt different, lighter, as though the tension had given way to something hopeful. As Sarah stood among her co-workers, clutching her check and the lingering words of the man in the red hat, she realized that her life had shifted in a way she never could have imagined. She wasn't just the quiet girl from the food court anymore. She was someone who had been seen, heard, and given a chance to dream again. Tom, watching her from a short distance, made a silent vow to himself. Today wasn't just a lesson for Sarah or the crowd. It was a lesson for him, too. A reminder that leadership wasn't about rules alone, but about recognizing the humanity in everyone. The man in the red hat might have disappeared, but the impact of his words and actions remained, resonating in the hearts of all who had witnessed them. Felt the same, yet entirely different. Her co-workers greeted her with warm smiles and nods of encouragement, gestures that spoke louder than words. For the first time in a long while, Sarah felt seen, not just as an employee, but as a person with dreams and struggles. As she adjusted her apron and prepared for the morning rush, a few customers who had witnessed the events from the previous day stopped by. "You're Sarah, right?" an older woman asked, her kind eyes crinkling at the corners. "I just want you to know how inspiring you are. You remind me of my granddaughter. Keep going, dear." Sarah thanked her softly, her cheeks warming as others in line nodded in agreement. At her workstation, a colleague leaned over with a grin. "Looks like you're famous now," they teased lightly. Sarah laughed, a genuine laugh that felt unfamiliar but welcome. "I wouldn't call it fame, just a little attention for once," she replied, her voice filled with humility. Meanwhile, in his office, Tom Andrews reviewed the changes he'd started implementing. His email to the staff had been met with overwhelming positivity. Employees from various departments shared stories of their own struggles and triumphs, creating an unexpected wave of solidarity throughout the mall. Tom stepped out into the main plaza, his usual brisk stride softened with a sense of purpose. Spotting Sarah in the food court, he walked over. "Good morning, Sarah," he greeted with a small smile. She looked up, surprised. "Good morning, Mr. Andrews." "I just wanted to check in," he said, his tone sincere. "If there's anything you need, anything at all, don't hesitate to let me know." Sarah nodded, her gratitude evident. "Thank you, Mr. Andrews. I appreciate it more than you know." As Tom left, he noticed Linda near the entrance, her sharp eyes surveying them all with their usual vigilance. Catching his glance, she gave him a knowing smile and a slight nod, a silent acknowledgement of the shift in his perspective. By midday, the story of the man in the red hat continued to ripple through conversations and social media posts. People from all over shared their interpretations, debated the deeper meanings, and, most importantly, reflected on how they could contribute to the kind of kindness they had witnessed. In the quiet moments of her break, Sarah sat by a window overlooking the bustling parking lot. She pulled out her notebook, the same one she had used to draft the letter that started it all. Flipping to a fresh page, she began to write. "Dear stranger in the red hat, I don't know your name or where you came from, but I want you to know what you've done for me. You didn't just change my life. You gave me hope, something I hadn't felt in years. I promise to honor your request. I will pay it forward and make a difference, just as you made one for me." It continued moving, her pen moved steadily, her resolve growing stronger with each word. Outside the window, the sun shone brightly, casting its golden light over Oakwood Plaza Mall, as if to mark the beginning of something extraordinary. Nervousness. Walking through the campus, she clutched her notebook tightly, her mind filled with possibilities she had once thought out of reach. Each step felt like a victory, a testament to her determination, and the kindness of a stranger who had believed in her. Back at the mall, changes were already underway. Tom Andrews followed through on his promise, organizing regular staff meetings where employees could share their experiences, ideas, and concerns. The atmosphere within Oakwood Plaza Mall began to shift. Workers who had once felt overlooked now felt valued, their voices acknowledged in ways that had seemed impossible before. Linda often observed these meetings from the back of the room, a quiet smile on her face. She noticed how Tom had softened, his stern exterior giving way to genuine engagement. He no longer saw the staff as mere cogs in the machine, but as individuals with stories, struggles, and dreams. In the food court, Sarah continued to work part-time while balancing her studies. Her co-workers often remarked on her newfound energy and confidence. Customers who recognized her from the news approached to share their support or simply offer a kind word. One afternoon, a teenage girl hesitantly stepped up to the counter. "Hi, you're Sarah, right?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah smiled warmly. "That's me. How can I help you?" The girl glanced down, fiddling with her bracelet. "I just wanted to say, your story really inspired me. I've been struggling with some stuff, and hearing what you went through, it made me feel like maybe I can get through it too." Tears pricked Sarah's eyes as she reached out to touch the girl's hand lightly. "Thank you for telling me that. You're stronger than you think. Keep believing in yourself, okay?" The girl nodded, her expression softening as she walked away. As Sarah watched her leave, she felt a deep sense of purpose. The ripple of kindness that had touched her life was now spreading, inspiring others in ways she might never fully understand. At the end of her shift, Sarah sat by the window in the food court, the same spot where she had written her letter weeks before. Pulling out her notebook, she flipped to the last page and added a new line beneath her ongoing list of promises. "I will be the person who listens, just like someone listened to me." Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the mall. For Sarah, and for everyone touched by the events of that unforgettable day, a new chapter had begun. One defined not by rules or limitations, but by hope, courage, and the power of human connection. As she sat down at the small desk in her classroom, nervousness fluttered through her, but deep within, she felt a quiet certainty. This was where she belonged. The instructor entered, their warm smile filling the room with encouragement. "Welcome, everyone. This is where dreams begin, they said. But remember, every dream needs effort to grow, and every step forward requires courage. Sarah lowered her head, the instructor's words striking a chord. Her thoughts drifted to the promise she had made to the man in the red hat. "I will help others the way I was helped," she silently vowed, the weight of those words grounding her resolve. Far across the country, the man in the red hat, Elon Musk, sat in his office, scrolling through stories about the Lexington Mall event. Photos and videos of Sarah's moment had gone viral, sparking conversations worldwide. One comment stood out. "No one can change the world alone, but we can all change the world for one person." A soft smile crossed Elon's face as he leaned back in his chair, murmuring to himself, "Ah, that's exactly what we need to do." Rising, he walked to the window, sunlight spilling into the room. He stood there for a moment, lost in thought, before whispering, "There's still so much to be done." The story of Sarah, Tom, and the man in the red hat grew beyond a single event, becoming a powerful reminder of the importance of kindness and empathy. In the rush of daily life, it showed how a simple pause to listen and act could create ripples that transformed lives, not just for one person, but for an entire community. Through a small gesture, a message of compassion was amplified, revealing the strength of human connection. For Sarah, the moment had ignited her path forward. For Tom, it redefined leadership. For Elon, it reaffirmed the value of helping where one can. This story stands as a testament to how even the smallest act of kindness can inspire a wave of change, urging us all to believe in the power of empathy and to carry that belief into the world.